Glorious, pale, veiled in mystery and intrigue, it's been piercing the darkness of night with its rays ever since time immemorial. There hasn't been a single culture to not worship the moon. In fact, all living organisms have an affinity for it. For tens of thousands of years, humans have been fond of this heavenly body found in close proximity to Earth. All past generations have thought of what could lie on the moon, or what its purpose might be, or if it gives man any kind of special abilities. Humans have craved for so long to unravel the moon mystery, and the answer remained only at the stretch of their imagination, since there was no way on Earth they could reach it. Beyond the moon.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
We are go for launch. T-minus 60 seconds and counting.
In 1969, with the entire world watching and holding its breath, the Apollo 11 crew, Buzz Aldrin, Neil Armstrong, and Michael Collins, have finally reached this notorious celestial body.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It was indeed a small step for man, and at the same time, a giant leap for mankind. To everybody's surprise, the moon proved desolate and gray. There were no special findings whatsoever, except for a bunch of soil samples and rocks retrieved by the crew. And, of course, a lush collection of videotapes with the spaceflight and landing.
We, the crew of Apollo 11, are privileged to represent the United States in our first attempt to take man to another heavenly body.
Subsequent years have seen 9 other astronauts walk on the moon's surface. Every time, they would bring to Earth more and more soil samples, weighing hundreds of pounds, as well as priceless video footage.
Now, Neil's small step for man, which was his step, one human being, but humankind made a gigantic leap in going to the moon to be able to do that. Now, some people could say that it's a small step, Apollo going to the moon, a giant leap, and they've thought about the future. When is the giant leap going to happen? Yeah. But that wasn't meant to be a prophetic proclamation for the future.
Then, after a while, some of the images were thrown out of the archive oven into the public's grasp. And there were plenty of anomalies that caught the eye, especially eerie lights and out-of-place objects that surrounded the missions.
60 seconds.
Of course, they were all ignored or debunked as lens flares or video glitches. But many people refused to put their trust in the official explanation and began scrutinizing the public data they had at their disposal. NASA claimed there was nothing out of the ordinary regarding the moon, but people sensed there was something more than met the eye. The first recordings of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walking on the moon's surface were all grainy and blurry, although Hollywood movie quality in 1969 was pretty neat, or at least vastly superior than the original footage recorded on the moon.
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Hey! I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
You are not looking for anybody. you cannot find anybody.
People were demanding answers, and the pressure on NASA grew as days progressed. And then it happened.
Good afternoon and welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center.
In 2016, NASA admitted that the original footage of the first moon landing from 1969 was entirely lost. An investigation led by NASA engineer Richard Nafzger revealed that the priceless Apollo 11 tapes, along with 200,000 others, were degaussed or magnetically erased in order to be reused by the agency to save money. To tackle this grave issue, they grabbed available cassette copies from CBS News archives, together with other recordings stored at Johnson Space Center, and sent them all to a man named Lowry, best known for restoring old Hollywood films, so that he would digitalize and render what was left of the original footage. Thousands of years of waiting to reach the moon's surface, and the most prestigious space institution had erased the original evidence of the first moon landing like it was nothing of importance. And the worst part, they wouldn't let the public know about it, at least not entirely. Almost 5 decades after the initial man's descent on the lunar surface, and numerous questions with equivocal answers remain. Have we really been up there? Or was the moon landing staged inside a Hollywood basement? Is the moon really a natural satellite? Or is it rather artificial in nature?
Two Russian physicists, Vasin and Shebekov, came up with the idea that the moon must be an artificial object. That would mean that the moon had to be an artificial, an engineered object.
This suggestion is outlandish. However, it's only through their calculations and all the mathematics they determined that their theory is correct.
And so these Russian scientists, their theory is that the moon is a spaceship, it's got engines within, but that on the outside they've coated it with this moon-looking substance. Now, it's a far-fetched idea, but it makes a lot of sense in that you might want to shroud or cloak this craft and make it look like a very natural object.
And contains cities and structures that are inside and outside of the moon.
What did they discover on the lunar surface that they're not letting us know about? What's with all the strange and bright objects surrounding the lunar landings?
I'd prefer to see us go to Mars rather than go back to the moon, unless we need the moon as a stepping stone to Mars. It could be that in studying Mars, you will discover that the best way to do it is by way of a base on the moon, and if that turns out to be the case, well and good, but I see the moon really not as an end in itself, but really a stepping stone to deeper space, to Mars and to the planets beyond.
What is the moon? According to science, the moon is a natural satellite locked in Earth's orbit that exerts a gravitational force on our planet, responsible with pulling on water in the oceans and causing bulges that create high tide. We can only see one of its two faces, as the dark side of the moon lies concealed away from any curious eyes. When looked at through a telescope, the moon reveals many intriguing features deemed natural by the scientific community. There are numerous formations, especially inside craters, that greatly resemble artificial structures, the likes we see here on Earth. They also reflect a great deal of sunlight. Because of these, researchers pursuing alternative truths have wondered if there isn't already an active moon operation in place. After all, the moon is a very strategic spot. It has one hidden side where you can place all the bases without anyone noticing, while the other side is constantly keeping an eye on unaware Earthlings.
But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal?
And judging by the space race of the 60s, where the US competed against the Soviet Union to claim first spot on the moon, They really wanted to get the operations going.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
Whoever reached the lunar surface first had the upper hand in establishing the first facility, as well as discovering what was up there. After this duel had been comfortably won by the U.S., a new age to conquer Earth's orbit as well as space began. On March 23, 1983, during the Cold War between Soviet Russia and Western powers, President Ronald Reagan initiated the Strategic Defense Initiative, or SDI.
Let me share with you a vision of the future which offers hope. It is that we embark on a program to counter the awesome Soviet missile threat with measures that are defensive. Let us turn to the very strengths in technology that spawned our great industrial base and that have given us the quality of life we enjoy today. What if free people could live secure in the knowledge that their security did not rest upon the threat of instant U.S. retaliation to deter a Soviet attack, that we could intercept and destroy strategic ballistic missiles before they reached our own soil or that of our allies?
The president said he was launching a massive research effort to develop space-age weapons that would bring down or incapacitate Soviet missiles before they reached the U.S. This, the president claimed, would secure the U.S. against nuclear attack and eventually make nuclear weapons themselves obsolete.
I know this is a formidable technical task, one that may not be accomplished before the end of this century. Yet current technology has attained a level of sophistication where it's reasonable for us to begin this effort.
The project, dubbed Star Wars, was meant to deflect the Russian intercontinental ballistic missiles in case they were launched towards the US or Europe. In order to tackle the heavy artillery, breakthrough technologies had to be developed and installed in orbit. The project received funding but was short-lived. The Cold War had ended 2 years later, and the space technology seemed too complex and costly. So later, administrators had to reduce the SDI to a minimum. Of course, what went on behind closed doors remains classified to this day. However, various independent researchers believe they know what's happening above us, and I have to tell you, it's like something out of a sci-fi movie.
Gigantic, hollow spaceship that's been put into a special orbit around our planet and contains cities and structures that are inside and outside of the moon.
Skywatcher John Leonard Walson has captured mind-boggling footage of spaceships stationed in Earth's orbit in close proximity to the moon. He's captured a mothership and other small vessels on camera, together with other moon structures believed to be artificial and part of a larger complex. So, is it possible that world superpowers have already established a moon colony and are waiting for the opportune moment to make this news public? Or are we dealing with extraterrestrial beings that have dwelled on the moon for who knows how long? This would explain why nobody has set foot on the moon for such a long time. Is there a pact between these beings and our earthly leaders? Whatever the case, there are just too many strange things happening when it comes to the moon. For instance, in 2009, NASA had bombed the moon in a $79 million attempt to learn if there is water out there. The explosion was meant to raise 6-kilometer-high plumes of dust that would confirm the existence of water on the lunar surface or not. The mission failed to reach the predicted outcome, and many were left scratching their heads as to what had happened. The Cabeus crater where the explosion had taken place is on the dark side of the moon, further fueling beliefs that NASA had bombed a Russian or alien base instead.
This is Apollo Saturn launch control. We are still go at this time. T-minus 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. We have ignition sequence start. The engines are armed. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit. We have liftoff. Liftoff at 7:51 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
On December 21, 1968, NASA's Apollo 8 mission marked the first manned mission outside of Earth's orbit and around the Moon. Close to 3,000 photos were captured using a 70mm camera installed on the spacecraft. Before heading back to Earth, the camera snapped a peculiar picture of what appears to be a huge entrance into the lunar surface. No more pictures were taken afterwards. When the public demanded explanations, the astronauts blamed this on a camera glitch. And there are just too many weird things happening on the dark side of the Moon. During their 1969 lunar voyage, Apollo 10 crew heard weird music coming from this unseen part of Earth's satellite. So, could the Moon be more than what we are taught to believe? Well, after successfully carrying the first astronauts on the Moon and back to Earth, the spacecrafts were deliberately crashed into the lunar surface to serve scientific purposes. We don't know exactly what the researchers have concluded, but we do know what they heard: the Moon ringing like a bell when struck. With so many theories out there, it's challenging to determine which point of view is right or wrong, and how close we are to the truth. At the end of the day, our own research and life understanding will offer the answers we need and are craving for. If there are aliens involved, or humans, or even both, we can only speculate.